Top five season-long player props for the 2024 NFL season, plus two long shot picks that I think are totally undervalued. Now, welcome to my new YouTube page. My name is Peter Apple, and on this channel, you're going to find all of my futures and my week-to-week NFL best bets for the 2024 NFL season and beyond. And now, these five player props that you're about to hear in this video are not for the faint of heart. I'm not about to give you props that might seem easy and comfortable. Good. Our job is to find inefficient lines in the futures market and pounce. And now a $100 unit better is up over $7,500 taking my NFL plays over the last 3 seasons. And the futures market is where I feel that I really thrive. And these five props are my favorite to make us some money at the end of this NFL season. We're going to start with two interception props, a market that I feel is most overreacted to by the public. They see, oh, this guy threw a lot of interceptions last year. He's probably going to do it again. When in reality, we have to look at turnover worthy plays and see if you deserved all of the interceptions that happen, because we know that interceptions can be fluky. You might throw an absolute dime to a receiver, bounces off his hand, and the defender comes up and grabs it for an interception. Is that truly your fault? So we're going to identify two players this season who had a lot of picks last year, and we think that will regress to the mean. Last year, we did this with Dak Prescott taking his under on interceptions after a interception filled season the year before, and he went under it comfortably. So first, let's start at number one. Josh Allen under 12 and a half interceptions for 2 units. Now, I told you these props are going to make you uncomfortable, and I'm giving you this one first. So if it makes you too uncomfortable, you can click off the video now. All right, we're all back in. We're ready to get locked in. Let's talk about Josh Allen. So the wide receiver room looks completely different from last year. Stephon Diggs is a Houston Texan. Gabe Davis is a Jacksonville Jaguar. That may you think like the Bills passing attack will weaken, but I just don't see it that way. I think it's going to change. And I think it'll be for the better for Josh Allen. Offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey was let go after week 10, and Joe Brady filled in the interim. The Bills went 6-1 after Brady took over in the regular season, beat the Steelers in the playoffs, and then lost to their rival, Chiefs. Brady was hired as the full-time offensive coordinator this offseason with glowing support from Josh Allen. Now, after Dorsey left, the Bills' offense started running a lot with James Cook, who's a beast, using two tight end sets at a higher rate, and saw an increase in EPA per play and success rate. 11 of Josh Allen's 18 interceptions came in the first 10 weeks, only throwing 7 interceptions in their last 9 games, which includes the playoffs. Based on last year's offensive scheme and Davis and Diggs' departure, I expect the Bills' offense to rely much less on the big play, leading to fewer turnovers. We should see James Cook's workload increase short intermediate passes to tight ends and rely on Curtis Samuel in the slot. Now, even if this offense, let's say everything I said there is a lie, it's not, but let's say it is. Let's say the offense stays exactly the same. Allen is due for turnover regression in a positive manner. He had 23 turnover worthy plays last year with 18 interceptions. Basically, every time a turnover was in the card, it almost happened. That tends to regress towards the mean, and it is unlikely every turnover worthy play will result in a turnover once again. To put that in perspective, here are all the quarterbacks with 20 plus turnover worthy plays. Don't you see kind of a pattern here? You can even see Patrick Mahomes with 22 turnover worthy plays and 14 interceptions. But I see guys where the turnover worthy play to interception ratio is about a half. For every 20 turnover worthy plays you have, you should be around 10 interceptions. We also must remember that his turnovers cut down with the new OC. This is the totality of the season numbers where he threw more interceptions than games played with Ken Dorsey. And also a quick nugget, Josh Allen led the NFL in 2022 with 33 turnover worthy plays. It's actually absurd, but he only threw 17 interceptions, one less than last year. That's a standard ratio, not last year. So, among players with 21 to 26 turnover worthy plays, the average number of interceptions was 11.22. That's normal. Allen was the outlier last year. With a change in scheme to limit the turnover-worthy plays in general, coupled with positive regression, I do not see Josh Allen exceeding 12 interceptions this year. Also, and I do take a lot of unders, if he were to get hurt, those games missed would mean less interceptions. I'm making this bet assuming he plays every game, but you have to factor that into your handicapping where a lot of people like to play overs. And I like a good over here and there. But you're only going to find one over among my top 5 season long player props because injuries are a real thing in the NFL. Also, especially with Josh Allen's makeup and the way that he plays the quarterback position, he's balls to the wall. He's going after it. He's not much of a slider, right? So I'm looking at Josh Allen, positive turnover regression, a new offense that should limit those turnovers, and the potential that he gets hurt. But I am making this bet assuming full health. Josh Allen under 12 and a half interceptions. Our second interception prop before we get to some touchdown props, which I'm sure everybody is going to like a little bit more. But this time we're taking Jalen Hurts, quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, under 10 and a half interceptions. It's a similar story to Josh Allen. We have a quarterback due for positive turnover regression and an offense trending towards a run-first scheme. The Eagles' offense was so lethargic last year after Shane Steichen left and new OC Brian Johnson took over. There was no sense of urgency with this team. The pace, especially early, was much slower. We talked about these in the other videos, which you can find on this page, where we took the Eagles to win the NFC East. You can also find other futures videos that I've posted so far. And while you're at it, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You're going to find all of my NFL picks on this channel. But the 2022 Eagles would come out hot and then suffocate opposing defenses as the game continued. This version, wasn't getting a lead. We're talking about last year. So they had to play catch up, which led to some stupid decisions by Jalen Hurts, and the run game really suffered. I don't see that being the case this year. New OC Kellen Moore should completely revamp this offense. The word out of camp is they want to make their offense impossible to decipher. I like that. The offense wasn't as bad by the numbers with Johnson at the helm. It was predictable. The Eagles didn't have much of a running game last year, and when the Eagles were in close games, Hurts would often force balls to receivers, which was unusual for what we've seen from him. Hurts only had 6 interceptions in 2022 versus 15 last year. Now, with Saquon Barkley added to the fold, along with PFF's second best offensive line, I don't see Hurts having to use his arm to win games like he tried to last year. But again, even if the offense stays exactly the same, he's due for turnover regression. Jalen Hurts had 16 turnover-worthy plays, yet threw 15 interceptions. That's absurd, especially when we look at the numbers among quarterbacks with 14 to 19 turnover-worthy plays. You can see it in the graphic besides me, right? There's not really that many outliers except potentially Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts. As you can see, Hurts is the clear outlier. The average number of interceptions last year with 14 to 19 turnover-worthy plays is 8.1. So even if Hurts has the same number of turnover-worthy plays last year, regression should be on his side. He only had 15 interceptions over 2 seasons before the 2023 season. Change in scheme, new running back, all of the weapons, Hurts should have a much more efficient season. This regression analysis, like I said, helped us big time with our biggest prop of the year last year with Dak Prescott. Dak had 20 turnover-worthy plays in 2022 and threw 15 interceptions. Last year, he cut down the turnover-worthy plays to just 17, but only had 9 interceptions and went under that 11.5 number with ease. Hurts is an even more extreme example. Also, again, got to put injuries in this. He could get hurt, miss games. That means no interceptions. But again, we are making this bet assuming full health. Jalen Hurts under 10.5 interceptions for 2 units. All right, I just gave you ones that are not very fun, right? Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, we got to be careful. But this one, I think you're going to like a lot. Bijan Robinson over 6.5 rushing touchdowns for 2 units. Oh, it's so time for the Bijan Robinson show to unleash fury on the NFL. It's all set up for him to take that next step to a superstar running back. He only had 4 rushing touchdowns last year, but I expect that number to double this season. When backing running backs in the futures market, I got to make sure that offensive line is elite. The Falcons certainly have that unit squared away as PFF ranks them as the 6th best offensive line. Drew Dahlman really stepped up at center and was graded as PFF's third best run blocking center. Chris Lindstrom was PFF's highest rated guard, and all 5 of their offensive line from last year return. Per Sharp Football Analysis, and I mentioned Sharp Football Analysis, you've probably seen them if you've seen the rest of my videos. Warren Sharp, highly recommend the follow, highly recommend getting his book. There's no picks in there, but it's the most detailed analysis you are going to find, and I use that for all of my futures, all of my win totals. It's a great book to have. I feel like he should pay me now for how much I advertise him, but he doesn't have to pay me at all because he's the one that helps me. So per Sharp Football Analysis, the Falcons are also expected to play the NFL's number one easiest schedule of run defenses. So Bijan Robinson will be behind one of the best offensive lines in football, coupled with the easiest schedule of run defenses. This should result in a lot more red zone trips this year. Desmond Ridder had 43 attempts inside the red zone last year, 5 more than Zach Wilson, and 1 less than Bryce Young. Even if Desmond Ridder was still the quarterback, I think we can expect more red zone trips this year. But if it's not Desmond Ridder, it's Kirk Cousins. Cousins has more trips to the red zone in 8 games with the Vikings did than Desmond Ridder had in all 15 games with the Falcons. Not only that, but Desmond Ridder had 5 rushing touchdowns last year. Cousins had 0 rushing touchdowns last year, but he hasn't had more than 2 in a season since 2017. Especially after an Achilles injury, I would project him at 0 once again. If Cousins were to go down, they'll go with Michael Penix. He only had 3 rushing touchdowns last year at the University of Washington, so we shouldn't expect him to take off in the red zone either. Just based on that analysis alone, I think he goes over. But my confidence increased by bringing in new offensive coordinator Zach Robinson. Now, I'm personally a Rams fan, and I know Zach Robinson's scheme pretty well. He loves handing it off in the red zone. Kyren Williams had 12 touchdowns last year, and I couldn't believe it because I wasn't even a big Kyren Williams fan. Now I kind of am because he was amazing, but he still is not nearly the explosive athlete that Bijan Robinson is. I expect the new OC to relentlessly run Bijan in the red zone. And we should also expect the Falcons just to be better with how easy their schedule is. After a 7-10 season and a 9.5 win total, we should expect a lot more positive game scripts that lead to running backs getting more carries. Now, 7 rushing touchdowns is relatively easy to get. 18 players had 7 or more rushing touchdowns last year. Now, Tyler Algier, I know, I can already hear you. Well, Peter, Tyler Algier is going to be in the mix. Tyler Algier, there's still so many to go around. A team like the Lions had 9 or more rushing touchdowns from 2 guys. If the Falcons truly decide to use Algier over the guy they drafted early in the first round, they're doomed. They have to realize what kind of unique talent they have in Bijan and make him the focal point of the offense. We also have to remember that we are betting it over, so there is risk of injury. But based on this analysis, I think if he stays healthy, he's going to get there in 10 games. I think that Bijan Robinson is going to be a force in the red zone this year. I'm taking his over 6.5 rushing touchdowns, again, for 2 units. Now, on this level, we're talking about rushing touchdowns. Let's look at 2 guys who I actually think are going to go under their rushing touchdown. And we're going to start with new Bears running back DeAndre Swift, under 5.5 rushing touchdowns for 2 units. Now, he signed a 3-year contract with the Chicago Bears in the offseason. Swift had a career year in 2023, running for 1,449 yards on 229 attempts. That's 4.6 yards per attempt, with only 6 touchdowns due to Jalen Hurts and the tush push. Now, DeAndre Swift had 10 runs from inside the 5-yard line last year. He scored on just 2 of those runs, which was the lowest conversion rate for any player with at least 10 attempts inside the 5-yard line. Jalen Hurts had 16 runs inside the 5 and converted to touchdown on 13 of them, which was the highest conversion rate of any player. You would assume that Swift leaving the Eagles and the tush push would be positive for his touchdown upside in 2024, but I think it's actually the opposite. Running behind the Eagles' offensive line, which is arguably the best in football last year, gave Swift plenty of room to run before contact. He averaged 2.8 yards before contact in 2023, which was the 4th most among running backs, but he struggled to gain yards after contact last year, only 1.8 yards after contact, which was 24th most among running backs. He'll now be running behind a Chicago Bears offensive line that is a clear downgrade from the Eagles O-line. PFF has the Bears ranked number 11 going into this season. Now, escaping Jalen Hurts in the tush push is a positive in a vacuum. But there's a real possibility that Swift actually gets less rushing opportunities inside the 10-yard line with the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams is a clear threat to run the ball in the red zone and should steal touchdowns from Swift. He had 11 in 2023, and he had 10 in college in 2022. Now, Williams already has one rushing touchdown in the preseason as well. The Bears also have really solid depth at the running back position behind Swift and Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson, who both had pretty solid rookie years in 2023. Roschon Johnson had a very solid rookie year in 2023. And below is the 2023, or above, I'm not sure where my guy Peyton's going to put that graphic for you, is the 2023 Chicago Bears rush percentage and attempts inside the 10-yard line compared to the Eagles. As you can tell, Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts, it's a lot different. D'Onta Foreman and DeAndre Swift, a lot different. Kenneth Gainwell and even the backups, there's a pretty big difference there. And the Bears were unafraid to spread the ball inside the 10 with 4 solid rushing options. If you replace Caleb Williams with Justin Fields and DeAndre Swift with D'Onta Foreman, there's a massive drop-off in touchdown upside for Swift. Even if Swift were to outpace Foreman's 25% rate, he'll be well below his 40% rate that he had in Philly. Overall, Chicago ran the ball 39 times inside the 10-yard line last year, compared to the Eagles, who ran the ball 67 times inside the 10-yard line, which was the most in the NFL. I expect the Bears offense to improve with Williams under center, which should increase runs inside the 10. So if the Bears run 45 times inside the 10-yard line and Swift takes 35% of those runs, that's 16 attempts inside the 10. The average conversion on runs inside the 10 is 30%, which gets Swift to 4.8 touchdowns. So I threw a lot of numbers at you, but basically the usage for DeAndre Swift doesn't promote touchdowns this year with the Bears, but people might think, oh, he's in a new spot. No, we're taking his under 5.5 rushing touchdowns. Last player prop before we get to the long shots. Now, Tony Pollard, we're going to take his under 5.5 rushing touchdowns, minus 115 for 2 units. Now, Tony Pollard signed a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Tennessee Titans in the offseason as the franchise cornerstone Derrick Henry departed for the Baltimore Ravens. Following a similar formula to the DeAndre Swift touchdown underplay, this is a bet on a lack of opportunities inside the 10-yard line and a decreased workload with competition with Tyjae Spears. Pollard saw the biggest workload of his career in 2023, and he eclipsed 200 carries for the first time en route to 1,100 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns on 252 carries. Going into the 2023 season, Pollard was coming off a fractured left leg and a high ankle sprain that he says held him back in the first half of 2023. Despite what Pollard says, though, he averaged 3.95 yards per carry in the first 8 games of 2023 and 4.02 yards per carry in 9 games of 2023 after. Barely a difference. Now, Pollard enters his 6th NFL season, where even the best running backs start declining, and he moves from the Cowboys' high-flying offense to the Titans offense led by Will Levis. Now, rushing opportunities inside the 5 and 10-yard line will be diminished for 2024 for Pollard, who saw 30 rushes inside the 10 in 2023. The entire Titans team only had 32 rushing attempts from inside the 10 last season. We must also factor in that Pollard, when given the chances inside the 5 and the 10-yard line, he converted at a very low rate. Of his 13 rushes inside the 5, he only scored 3 touchdowns. He had 17 rushes between the 5 and 10-yard line, only scored on 2 of those. He added 1 more touchdown on a very long run. Long runs should not be much of a concern, as Pollard ran for 15-plus yards on just 11 of his 252 carries last season. Pollard dominated the rushing share for the Cowboys, taking 60% of the runs inside the 10, and is looked poised to eat up most of Derrick Henry's 75% share of runs inside the 10 last year. But it's aggressive to assume that Pollard is just going to be handed all of those opportunities. Tyjae Spears is entering year 2 after a very good rookie season, where he averaged 4.5 yards per carry on 100 carries. Now, Spears' involvement in the offense should again take a leap in 2024. The Titans did not invest a third-round pick in him for nothing, and I expect the backfield to kind of be a two-pronged approach with Pollard and Spears. Lastly, the Titans had the arguably worst offensive line in 2023, and even after selecting J.C. Latham 7th overall, they have the 30th ranked offensive line coming into 2024, according to PFF. That's a huge downgrade for Pollard from the Cowboys' top 10 offensive line. Between decreased rushing opportunities inside the 5 and the 10, a much worse offense and offensive line, and the likelihood of a running back by committee approach should keep Pollard under 5.5 rushing touchdowns in 2024. Now we got a few long shots. Now these are not going to be as analyzed, or at least on this video, as those big time props. These are bets that I think show a lot of value. I have 2 of them for you, and then we'll talk about the third, but that line has kind of vanished. So let's just get straight into the long shots. But before that, remember, we are sponsored by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks, and it's a very good idea to get all of the books at your disposal so you can always get the best line. So if you are not on BetMGM yet, I highly recommend using promo code JUSTGridiron. That'll get you a first bet offer up to $1,500 back in bonus bets. So if you're new, you can place a wager. If it loses, you'll get it all back in bonus bets. And if you win, congratulations. But it is important to get on all books. Just Gridiron on BetMGM. Start with the long shots. Devon Achane, plus 3,000, 30-1 to lead the league in rushing. Only running back in NFL history to average over 7.5 yards per carry, and he did it in his first season. He also bulked up during the offseason to try and stay healthy this year. And his counterpart, Raheem Mostert, has now played 2 straight fully healthy seasons, something he's never done in his career, and is now 32 years old. We want upside with Achane, right? He could end up being the second coming of Jamal Charles, or he's not able to stay on the field enough to cash this. I love Devon Achane. I was watching him last year. I was blown away by the talent. So I want to invest in that talent in some right. So you could say, well, Peter, why don't you take over 750.5? It's a pretty low line. You could, but there's also a possibility that it gets hurt, doesn't replicate that success. He's not the same runner. That was a flash in the pan. I don't want to get involved in that. I want to take the upside, the allure. So a sprinkle on 30-1, I think, is the right way to play Devon Achane. So let's get to one that might feel a little bit more palatable. Justin Jefferson, Minnesota Vikings, to lead the league in receiving yards. Jetta's put up a 1,000-yard season. He's, can we just take a second? Like, I'll read you some stats, but like, he's amazing. 1,000-yard season in 10 games last year, with plenty of games from Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall, whatever the hell the Vikings were putting at quarterback last year. He is the Vikings offense, and I expect him to be the same again. He was second in yards per game last year and is either the best wide receiver or the second best wide receiver, depending on how you look at Tyreek Hill. Me personally, I think Justin Jefferson is a little bit better. Now, Hill is already dealing with a thumb injury, and CeeDee's in a contract dispute. Now, quarterback issues in Minnesota are what is keeping Jefferson, I think, off the top spot, but he was amazing with horrible quarterbacks last year. And now this year, moving in for the Vikings, you expect a lot of negative game script, which should keep the ball in the air for Jefferson. And it hasn't mattered who his quarterback was earlier. So why does it matter now with Sam Darnold, who might even be better than Nick Mullins? Let's say Darnold gets hurt. All right, Nick Mullins. Freaking Jefferson's averaging over 100 yards per game with Nick Mullins in there. But I think market has cooled on Jefferson a little bit due to last year's injury, and now we buy back in. So those are the plays. We got 5 season-long player props, 2 units each, and a couple of sprinkles on some long shots. And I told you I would have a third one. Is Breece Hall to win Offensive Player of the Year. I got it at 25-1, and I absolutely love the price. Now it's like 18-1, but at the time, he was in the same breath as guys like A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson. Offensive Player of the Year is very tied to fantasy football. You got to put up gaudy stats. And this is a guy who finished 4th in all-purpose yards. And he's probably going to go 2, 3, 4 in most fantasy drafts. He's an absolutely elite running back, both receiving and running the football. I think he's going to win Offensive Player of the Year. You can still dabble. I think best price is around 18-1 on BetMGM. Don't love it as much, but at 25-1, I had to bet it. So I'll let you know that's my pick for Offensive Player of the Year. If you want a tail, great. Just letting you know 18 to 1 is not a price I wanted. I wanted 25 to 1. I got 25 to 1. So do a little bit more research into that one. But I love Breece Hall to win Offensive Player of the Year. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed this analysis, hit that subscribe button. I'll be giving out all of my features. We still have more features to go on this channel. And in the regular season, you get a Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, of course, Sunday plays all season long, broken down like this. And if you enjoyed, again, hit that subscribe button. But remember,